What is up, guys? It's Austin here with Unfiltered Wellness. Today, we're going to be walking through a lesson that I am super excited to get into. Because today, we're talking about the concept of big isn't strong, strong is strong. There's so many fallacies I see when it comes to thinking strength training, or better yet, let's call it weight training for the world of HYROX. Many athletes think of weight training just as another little thing that adds in there, rather than something that can drastically improve performance. So you see, whenever we start running, if we go all the way back to the beginning and we're first starting to run, if you just run a little bit, you get better from it. But as you go on, you start to find this relationship of intensity and volumes and so forth that start to come into play in the game. You start to figure out recoverability. You start to learn all these little things. Strength training is very much the same way. Don't be a pro in one, but be a complete amateur in the other. Be a pro in all of it. Be able to get yourself as best as you possibly can in all of it, constantly being a student of the sport and the different things, the different traits that can enhance that and further progress it. I think one of the biggest things, back to the big and strong, but strong is strong. A lot of people just lift in the rep ranges of, 8 to 20. Yeah, some people do some strength work. Some people don't really. Some people are just sitting there doing 3 sets of 8, 3 sets of 8, 3 sets of 8 and spamming that, which again, if you're brand new to it, yeah, you'll get a little bit of benefit off that. If you've never ran, if you just run a little bit, you'll get a benefit off of that. But there comes a point in time where there's another level beyond that, and that you allow more progression to happen. The whole point of adapting is to never truly adapt. If you've adapted to it, you're no longer getting better to it. You want enough stress in relation to this adaptation equation that you're getting better. And so some other ways to do that, in running, we go from just, hey, we ran, to then eventually we put in a little bit of structure. Now we learn about things like a tempo run or a threshold run or speed runs, or you start to add these new tools in. And weight training has the same pattern that it follows. After you've done some of those sets to 8, 10, 12, so forth, if you've done that, you can start to add in the next thing. Our speed run in this case for strength training is going to be, the dynamic effort method. I really, really, really like whenever people are getting into training. We use a progression, and I saw this work years and years back. Again, this is talking about development models. If you've never done this, I would highly recommend it. It's where I think everybody should start whenever it comes to trying to get the most out of strength for the sport. 3 sets of 5, add a little bit of weight each week. That first week, you're going to work up to a set of 5 that is tough, but you definitely could have probably did it for 10, 11, 12 reps. Sweet. The next week, we're going to add 5 pounds. And the next week, we're going to add 5 pounds. We're going to keep doing that. You could do this twice a week on the squat until you were no longer able to add weight. This should take about 6 to 8 weeks. So, roughly 40 extra pounds by the end of that. The first week, you just work up to find your starting weight. But after that, you do 3 sets of 5 each week. And if you can, you do it twice a week, where you're continuing to just add 5 pounds each time you do it. If you did that twice a week for 6 weeks, there's a total of 12 times of that. 12 times 5, you're up to 60 extra pounds on that, as it should be. And here's the kicker. When you get there, you're actually not done. You're going to go and you're going to push it one more step further. You're going to go now, once you've got to a day where you've gotten 5, 4, 3 type of reps, instead of 5, 5, and 5 on those 3 sets with that heavy weight, you need to take off load. You're going to go back to what you did 2 weeks ago, and you're going to use that again for your 3 sets of 5. This time, you're going to try to move it even faster than you did previously, because now, you've done that weight, it's possible. And so when you come back down, attack it. By doing that for the next 2-3 weeks, you're going to come through and you're going to be able to break past that plateau and actually get, another 10 pounds or so, or even up to 15 to 20 on top of that lift, another 2 to 4 weeks of keeping that 3 sets of 5. Finally, it's going to happen again, and you're not going to get all the reps one day. If you get 5, 4, 4, basically, if you're 13 reps or above, you can retry that during your next squat workout. But if you're under 13 reps total from those 3 sets of 5, you got 4, 4, and 3, you're under that 13 total reps. What I would do from there is fully reset it back again 2 weeks. But if you get 4, 5, 4 again, and you're above that 13 rep range, go ahead and retry the weight the next day. You have 2 options at it at that point. Once you finally come to a point where you've hit that second time of not being able to get all those reps, like we talked about there, if you're at 5, 4, 4, 3, honestly, there's a third route you could take, and I'd prefer this one most. At that point, chalk it up. You've maximized the linear progression, and we are going to move into true full-on next method, max effort. So we've practiced dynamic effort, so-so. We've introduced it during that 3 sets of 5 scheme. Whenever you'd taken the weight off and you tried to come back and reattack it harder, great. That was a form of doing that, but it's still not in the percentage ranges that we would be doing. The reason we can get away with this, that 3x5 system is essentially like doing 2 tempo runs a week that were, not very hard tempo runs. They were enough that it was a tempo run, but it's not so much that like we maximize that entire progression. We're smoked for 2 days, this, that, the other. It's very recoverable and able for us to adapt to and overcome. That squat progression is much the same way. When we move up and we go into max effort, dynamic effort, now that stress gets split again. So instead of it just being a 1 split, like we added a tempo run, now we're going to add a long run and a tempo run into our, what you should just be running. The way we do that from lifting is we're going to add in max effort and dynamic effort. So now instead of doing this 3 sets of 5 method, we're going to be doing different days where we're 9 sets of 3 down to 7 sets of 3, as well as doing days where we do 1 rep maxes. We'll do a 1 rep max twice a week, and with that 7 to 9 sets of 3 twice a week as well, between lifts like squat, deadlift, and bench. Yes, you can use clean pulls and different stuff from Olympic lifts, which we won't get into here. That's another topic, but GPP gives you a better advantage because you have more tools. So former people that run CrossFit, yeah, the having that movement base for HYROX, it's a benefit for them. It 100% is. If they have the tools for Olympic lifting and so forth and et cetera, it just gives you more options. The better tools you have available to build a house, the better house you're going to build. But back to it, dynamic effort, max effort. Bring those in. Like I said, you have 4 lifting days between those in a weekly basis. What we like to do with Sport of HYROX is actually condense down into a 3-day model where we're actually doing, we're not always doing max effort lower. We're always doing max effort upper, unless it's the week of competition. But outside of that, we break up our volumes with the dynamic efforts. So we're not always doing a full 9 sets of 3 squat and deadlift and so forth. We do keep volume very high when it comes to the accessories, which would be like adding another run. This time we could be calling, you could use it as a speed run. This is what we're going to have in regards to the volume that we're getting in from these special exercises at that point. People have done the 3 sets, 8, 10, 12, yada, yada. Great. That's still in play. We're never saying get rid of it. We just use that on small special exercises rather than the big movements. The reason we do this is because, again, it's a recovery equation. It always eventually comes down to recovery the further and further up you try to press it in any sport. And so as we start to change and we look at these, accessory lifts rather than just, cool, I did 3 sets of 10 of a press, 3 sets of 10 of a squat, whatever the thing was for the day, we break that down into smaller components. What part of the squat need to be better? What part of the deadlift? What part of the bench? It's not because you're trying to be a powerlifter, but it's a diagnostic tool to understand where your body is limited at. Look at it from the sport. Hey, where out in the sport am I breaking down? What are my movements? You can see all these things start to show up, and you build the special exercises around that. You build the training volume around what are the needs that we have to go after. Because again, the further you get, the higher outputs you get, the less resources you have to recover with, because you're trying to do that with multiple things and keeping those all at a high enough level. When we're going to races, I see a lot of people that actually detrain through the season. They lose fitness throughout the season. What if we had a system developed that actually allowed somebody to gain fitness as they're racing? Now with how it's set up, you've got to at least have the 5 races. And so it's like, if you want that, like, you're going to have to compete you're going to be competing 2-ish times a month at times, depending on the races and what's all lined up, include the travel, everything with there. If you're training twice, if you're going to compete, even if you're just racing twice a month and you're having to deload, that's 2 weeks every single time you've had to lose training. Do that over the course of 5 months. You've lost 10 weeks of training at that point. Nobody has time to lose 10 weeks of training. We need a system design that actually allows us to do that. And that's what I'm saying when it comes to the strength. When we go in and we train, we're not training to make a muscle bigger. If your accessories are properly set up, you're training to make the movements that you're doing for the sport better and more efficient. Building up your body's ability to resist fatigue, put out force quicker, so you can continue to hit new PRs, going up and up and up throughout time. whenever we get to the pinnacle in the sport of being able to push the race as fast as it possibly can, which I still think there's still more to come on that. I really think that it's going to come down to people trying to figure out just how to recover faster. When you do the right stuff in training, you don't waste time doing the wrong stuff. So you have more resources available to recover with and actually make more gains. Your adaptation rate is set at a point in those regards based around training volumes and how much we've taken on the body's used to take. Everybody's going to look a little bit different because everybody has different lives. Everybody has different structure for the day. Everybody has different stressors throughout their day. And people are training different amounts of volumes. Some people are training, at a more moderate 6 to 8 hours. Some people are training, that 16 to 20 hour mark. When we're looking at these and understanding progressions, we just have to figure out where the pieces fit. But I always am going to say, if your strength training is saving you resources and getting you better because it's direct and more specifically targeted, you're going to have an advantage there when it comes to the rest. So now we'll get into that. How does this carry over? What would be the benefits of having a good level of strength? What would be the benefits of having proposed dynamic effort work? What do these things do? The accessories. It all comes back to the same stuff. Again, we're not trying to build muscle. We're trying to build the body. We're trying to build systems of how the body's functioning so we can push the sport to the highest level. Push our performance for that coming race to the highest level. Hit a PR. Get the momentum that these things bring. But if we're uneducated around what to do, it becomes very hard the further up that gets. You have to figure out how to actually solve the problem if you want to solve the problem. When we have these methods come in, whenever you're going through, and so there's a few ways to get faster, so we haven't even talked about that yet with regards to HYROX. Just because you have great endurance, awesome, but you also got to be fast enough to run those paces. If you can only run a 3:30 max for your 1K, how are you supposed to hold a 3:30 for a race? You won't be able to. It's the law of it's sub maxes. Like you can't. The person that can run a 3 minute per K can sit there and hold that 3:30 per K a lot easier than the person who can only run 3:30 and then they try to max it out over and over and over. You just can't do that. Let's pretend your bench press max is 200 pounds and you do 200 pounds for as many reps as you can that day. You're going to get one, and then you're going to wait a little bit and get one, and then you're going to be able to get, a few reps with it. But what if your bench press max was 300 and you go to do 200? Now you get a lot of reps, and then you can turn around and do a lot more reps again and again and again and again. It's a lot easier on the body when the ceiling is higher. So by doing top speed, you can get the ceiling higher. It makes the rest easier to recover from. So you can go keep the volume and push those things. That part of that comes from stride length. You have stride length and stride frequency. When stride length goes up, which is a byproduct of force production, so being able to push off the ground and cover more ground, I'm not saying that the runner's trying to reach out. They literally are just covering more ground because they put out more force, specifically through the things that help them run. Number two with that, you can also get faster by increasing stride frequency. Think about this as how long that foot's staying in contact on the ground, how many steps it's taking us to get through the race, stride length, and then how long our foot's on the ground throughout each of those steps. Those are two ways we get faster. Those are two things when it comes to speed. With stride frequency, when we introduce the dynamic effort method, which you mentioned from 7 to 9 sets of 3, this is where we're going to be able to use things like accommodating resistance. And now we're not just trying to train, let me build some muscle in my legs from a squat. We're trying to train your body to move faster. We want to increase stride frequency. One of the ways we can do that is increasing rate of force development internally with the body. What's going on when we're going through these lighter weights with things like bands, chains involved, as well as we're teaching the body, yes, how to accelerate, but more importantly, for when it comes to the race itself, you're going to get carries over benefits largely on max effort, dynamic effort for your stations. But beyond that, you still get these benefits for running. It still makes sense for a runner to have these. It's just a system. It just is. It's max effort, dynamic effort, special exercises, keep the body durable so you can keep taking on everything else. The better you move, the faster you recover. If you program it properly, you can really extend and create a big advantage in those regards for the individual. Because remember too, we talk about it always comes down to recovery. If you recover faster because you're moving better, you're going to be able to get more out of the volume you're taking on and or be able to handle more volume for the sport. There is at the certain level, there just is a requirement of volume that needs to be spent. I don't know if you can really be at the elite top without having some times in your life with being 14 to 16 hours of training volume. I'm not saying that's forever, but there's got to be some seasons that are very direct and targeted that build that capacity for that level of the sport. Better yet, if you can do that for years and years and years and years, that's just part of what it is at the very, very top. To do that and sustainably do that and get there, I'm saying again, that's one of the ways. If you can move better, because now you're also not going to get hurt, you're going to save time. So we've reduced the amount of weeks that we had to take off for deloads, and we've also reduced the amount of weeks that we have to take off for injuries, because we've created a system that keeps the body healthy enough to be able to push what it needs to do, to be able to assess and see what's going on through the week as you're going through these lifts, to understand, am I not recovering? Man, my legs weren't very poppy this morning. Ooh, my shrink's down 20 pounds versus my old record today on this. Like, man, there's something going on performance wise. We need to understand, look deeper at that. Is the athlete underfueled? Is there too much stressors going on? Do we need to figure out supplementation, lifestyle strategy, interventions? What do we need to do to get that individual to be able to handle what it is they need to do for their given goal that they set out to accomplish? There's always a way there. You've just got to be able to maneuver and make pivots, adjustments along the way to get there. As soon as you start to figure out the answers to it all, the questions start to change. You have to continue to adapt. To not adapt, you're stuck, you're done. You're not going to continue to move forward with that. And so I think it's so critical that we have a good understanding of utilizing weight training. And, summarizing all this back up, we want to be able to increase stride length, stride frequency. We can do this through strength work as well as dynamic effort strength work, moving lighter weights faster, to be able to enhance this. There's an amount of volume that we should be able to take on from that. Yes, that's systemized out, everything systemized out. There's an optimal for everything. But two, when we look at that, remembering big isn't strong. We're not just trying to lift weights to grow muscle. We're trying to lift weights to give the body better outputs for the given tasks at hand. This is different for each sport. For the sport of HYROX, we understand, hey, half the sport is running. What could we do to become a better runner with the weight room to help and assist in that? A lot of that's just about keeping the body durable, healthy enough. The sport with the most amount of injuries is running. It's the hardest on the body. By understanding that and having proper strength training in the background, you continue to enhance that advantage. It's all about how many advantage you can have and create so that you can assess and continue to move forward throughout. We don't get stuck just because. There's always a reason behind things. And if we're able to assess those reasons and continue to move forward, man, that is the pinnacle. I just think that this system solves a lot of those equations for people, rather than having to get there and then have to see that and understand it and, waste all the time training for the years, coming above. It's not the sport isn't going to be, hey, at age 50, I'm going to hit my best time ever, or at age 70, I'm going to hit my best time ever. There is a window. There is a window for what genetically is possible for that person for their lifetime. Now, I'm not saying nowadays with how the sport is, like, well, I think there's people who now are in their 40s to 60s that probably, if this sport would have been around, if they were able to transport back in time and go, test themselves out versus the current field, maybe we see some different things there too. But there's a time period where you get to a certain age that you've passed the window of what is the highest possible for you in your ever career. Not to say you can't PR at that time, the sport's newer and so forth. Yes, definitely agree that, and you should be able to continue to PR to a point. Everybody will find what is their true potential if they're willing to go after that and just stay curious and have fun along the way to do it. I think when we have the opportunity to have the right training methodologies, right recovery strategies, right supplementation, lifestyle factors, accountability, support, teammates. Like, you give an opportunity for an athlete to really see what's possible. And I think that's one of the most exciting things, because you see whenever somebody's progressing sport, it's not just, yes, we see it externally, but it's a process that's going on internally that's forcing that and spurring it on and meeting it to those next levels. An individual has to be willing to get focused enough to be able to stay in that and continue to progress throughout that over time. There's, a lot of times it's like discipline is a great doorway into it. And I think it's very necessary, but there's also something that happens within that as you create this ritual and routine around that. You look at top level athletes, and a lot of that, the greats, it comes down to them having, a ritual, a routine of some sort that they were going through. Train at this time, they eat at this time, they sleep at this time. The basics are handled, and it just is. It is what it is. Same time, they still figured out how to reset, decompress, and adjust, and be able to keep, the fun and the curiosity and the enjoyment of the whole thing as they were going. That's what they're doing it all for. So I think keeping that at the forefront, cool. We're rock and roll and we're in business, and we're only going to continue to see, better and better PRs. The sport's only going to continue to evolve. It's just going to come down to who can figure out these things and apply them the quickest. That also has the talent, and the mindset behind it, to be able to do that. I truly believe whenever you cultivate the right pieces and systems and put them together, you give individuals opportunities to do this at higher and higher levels. And that's it for today. That's all we got today. Strength lesson. Big isn't strong. Strong is strong. Use the weight room to your advantage. We'll see you guys soon.